Hello and welcome to another knitting pod. I am Lena and I'm so glad you're here. I hope you are up for some chit chat about knitting because that is what we are going to do. Today, we are going to talk about some ideas to help you break out of a knitting funk. If you are like me, it is almost October. I can hardly believe it. It's almost October of 2023, and I am anxiously awaiting Stephen West's mystery knit along that starts this coming Thursday. The time is finally drawing near. For those of us who love this time of year, it is so much anticipation for something, for a pattern we're excited about. And for me specifically, I just look so forward to getting to spend time with Stephen West for a month and his creativity and his incredible tutorials and all that fun. And whether you are looking forward to the MCAL or not, I think the knitting funk is real. I think I can only speak for myself, but knitting is literally just an elemental part of my life. It's, when I'm happy and things are good, I knit and it makes me happier and things are even better. When I'm down and struggling, knitting is a comfort. When I am processing something difficult, knitting helps me think. It keeps my body doing something and it's like eases my mind and soothes my mind and I feel more present. When I'm listening to a great book or a great podcast, knitting is my companion in that. It is through and through a companion to me through the hardest times and the best times and everything in between. But just like any relationship, there are ups and downs. Sometimes, for whatever reason, we find ourselves in a little bit of a knitting funk. And it really feels like I'm shook up when I'm not feeling like I'm jiving with my knitting. And if you watched my episode last week, I chatted a bit about the fact that because I'm trying to clear off projects and just work on what's on my needles, and I'm not giving into new cast-ons that I wanted to cast on, like bigger projects like a shawl or a sweater, in anticipation of the MCAL, I'm just finding myself in a knitting funk. And after a lot of thinking about it and a lot of trial and error, I have found something that I think is a kind of maybe reliable way to get yourself out of a knitting funk. So to me, there were some criteria that I needed to meet in order to think of a project that was an ideal one in this moment. One, the number one thing to me is size. I think when we find ourselves in a little pickle with knitting, I don't think the best thing is to undertake a really big project again. I think really big projects have, to me, distinct phases. There's the really exciting, bubbly anticipation of finding the project and anticipating the project and getting yarn or finding the right yarn that you already have. There's just so much excitement in the beginning, the cast on, just seeing it start to be born. And then there's the end, which is sparkly because no one loves anything more than an FO, a finished object that we get to either enjoy ourselves or gift or whatever it is. The ending of anything has another really intense energy. But in the middle, there's always this murky middle area that is a little bit, can drag sometimes. And we have to kind of dig deeper to get through those moments. I think when you have a shorter project, you get a lot of sparkly beginning and a lot of sparkly end, and you minimize the murky middle. So to me, a smaller project is a great way to bust out of a funk. The other thing I love about this specific type of small project is it is singular. I think socks are a go-to for a lot of people. And I think if you're a sock knitter, you don't maybe even think about the fact there are two, like maybe it's just so second nature that you're having to make two distinct objects. And I know some people knit them in tandem. But for me, I love a sock, and then having to like re-engage and start the whole process over is a little bit of a thing I don't like. So what you're probably guessing we're left with is hats. I think hats are a fabulous way to bust out of a knitting funk, and I will tell you why. Number one, I think you don't have to gauge swatch most of the time. Most of the time, you can get away with not swatching for a hat. I know myself to be a very loose knitter, just generally. So by default, I always start with a needle size down. So if the pattern calls for a US 4, I drop down to a US 3 because I know myself to be a loose knitter. Therefore, even if I'm knitting a hat that from a designer I've never knit with, I just go with dropping down. And 90% of the time I'm using something superwash. So there's stretch. Usually the brim of a hat is ribbing, which also gives you a lot of leeway. So unlike a sweater or a tighter fitting top or something, I don't think you have to gauge swatch. So automatically you are jumping in to the project, which I think gives us a little boost, right? You're already into it. You're not having to swatch and wet block it and see how it turns out and all that really boring jazz. Also, I think it's amazing to use yarn you already have. And since hats require smaller quantities of yarn, we can enjoy yarn we have. And I think it gives you this extra buzz of using the resources you have. And maybe it's leftover yarn from another project that you end up having a hat that matches a sweater or a hat that matches a scarf or a cowl or a shawl, which I think is extra fun also. So to me, you just get a lot of bang for your buck with hats, y'all. And right now, when I was in a funk, that is what I needed. And I've knit lots of hats, but there's a specific type of hat that I have never knit. And that is what I decided to knit this time. And that is a beret. I have never knit a beret. And I thought, you know what? Maybe I'll look very silly in a beret. Maybe I'll look super cute to myself and I will love it. So it's fun to try something new and to have a new option almost for fall. Like we're going into fall, and I think it's a fun idea to be able to try a new look for yourself, zhuzh up some of those transitional outfits between, the summer and the winter where it's not quite, heavy beanies and covering everything up weather, but kind of can have a little bit more fun with the accessories you're making. You know what I mean? I looked up a couple of just images on Google to see if my style would gel with a beret, and I found some things. I'm going to pop some pictures up that were really cute. So hopefully these specific berets might tempt you to cast on. And I did cast one on and I am loving it, and I can't wait to show you. And it is totally reigniting the sparkle and the love of and joy of knitting that I was so desperately missing in my life. So without further ado, let's jump into the beret patterns that I found to be super intriguing. They're all very different. They all involve a different technique or have a different look. So I think there will be something for everyone. I've got my patterns right here and I've got some notes. So if I'm looking, I apologize, but I'm going to put up pictures and names, and there will be links in the description box. I'm not always good about adding in those links, but because this episode is about all these different patterns, I'm definitely going to put them in so that you can click on them if you are interested. Okay, this first one is possibly my favorite in this bunch because it is so gorgeous and eye-catching, and that is the Buness Beret, I don't know if I'm saying that right. Buness. I don't know. The designer is Mary Jane Mucklestone. It was published in Fair Isle Weekend, but it's also available on Ravelry as a single pattern. And as you can see, this is a color work pattern. However, I don't think it's like your run-of-the-mill color work hat. I think the design is so beautiful. The leaves, that leaf motif at the top is so gorgeous and nature inspired. But what I love the most is that she's matched it with such an unusual color palette. She has it in this red and I think I can't tell if she's transitioning with some light pink in the background, but it just has this stunning color work and unique color palette that if I were gonna knit this hat, I would totally try my best to emulate the colors she used, because I think that's what makes it really pop. I think if you did that leaf motif in more predictable like greens and yellows or something like that, or even fall colors like burnt orange, it would be beautiful. But to me, the motifs combined with the colors she uses makes this hat absolutely stunning. I think she looks so cute in it, and it looks like it will be perfect for fall, but also totally wearable for winter because, you can pull it down over your ears. Let's see, it's a $7 pattern. Totally reasonable. It is using fingering weight yarn. There's only one size. So again, I think if you're a loose knitter, maybe you err on the side of dropping down, but I think you've got plenty of flexibility when you've got a beret, which is already loose on top and has the ribbing to fit your head. I think you're safe without swatching. So that is my first pick, because I think there is nothing more. It's like the perfect blend between having to be mindful when you're doing color work, but also you can kind of fall into the rhythm of it. And so it just engages your brain in the perfect way. And I think the Goldilocks patterns for breaking out of a knitting funk are that nice sweet spot between mindful knitting and mindless knitting. And I have found when I'm in a chart and I have to count like 4 whites and then 1 red and then 2 pink, whatever it is, my mind is like so lightly engaged in that thought process. It's just, oh my gosh, it's perfect. It makes me so happy just even thinking about it. Some people don't like knitting for that very reason. I love it for that very reason. It's like it keeps my mind nicely contained, because sometimes she can get out of hand. Okay, so that is my first pattern, the Buness pattern by Mary Jane Mucklestone. Okay, the second pattern I'm going to talk about is called the April hat. And the fabulous thing about this hat, it is designed by Courtney Kelley in a publication that was the Year of Hats. Maybe you've come across this, but this pattern is free, okay? That is amazing. You can go on your Ravelry and download it for free and add it to your library right now so that when you find yourself in a funk, you can bust it out. Amazing. Number 2 amazing thing about this pattern is its worsted weight yarn, which to me, oh my gosh, it comes together so quickly, and watching that hat come to life with worsted weight yarn quicker than fingering, obviously, is just a major boost of confidence and joy. And I mean, talk about missing the murky middle. You're altogether really missing the murky middle with that. I think this hat is so cute with a pom-pom. I am not always a beret pom-pom person. I think I love beanies with pom-poms, but having a pom-pom on a beret goes either way for me. This one has that look that I think is totally adorable. And either buying a pom-pom or making a pom-pom adds so much fun. Like if I were gonna make this, I would assign my daughter making the pom-pom as an activity, and she would just be over the moon. So if you have a little one, I think that would be a really fun kind of bonding project. Maybe even make it for your little one. I don't know. I think that's a good idea. The other thing I loved about this pattern specifically, it has the puff stitch. And if you are a crocheter, as I was before I knit, I was a crocheter, and I think the puff stitch is absolutely beautiful. It is possibly one of my favorite crochet stitches, and it doesn't have a counterpart to me in knitting. A bobble and a puff stitch are, to me, as different as a dog and a wolf. Like, they're just, maybe from afar they would look a little bit similar, but they're very different. A puff stitch just has this soft, pillowy texture that a bobble doesn't. A bobble almost looks like firmer and like it pops, whereas a puff is like a gentle swell to me. And in this pattern, you're making the puff stitch with a crochet hook. So if you are a crocheter, a fun way to meld those two worlds. And if you're not, a fun way to try it out. So I think bonus points to that pattern for lots of things, but kind of melding those two fiber arts together, I think is really fun. So yay for the April hat. I totally would knit that. And she's made it in this really cute orangey red color. But I think it would really be cute also in like a more, muted tonal beige or camel color, I think would be so, so pretty. And I will talk more about holding mohair double with in hat patterns, but I think you could totally do that here and have an extra boost of joy, because that's what mohair does to me. Mohair, I've realized, it's like, I don't know, it's like having a cup of coffee in your favorite mug. It just adds something special, and that's how I feel about mohair. Anyway, maybe I do feel bad for people who can't use mohair, and I know there are those of you out there that are allergic to mohair or find it itchy. And you could also hold a strand of Suri alpaca, like a really thin, like Farmer's Daughter has a lovely Suri alpaca. That's a great mohair substitute. Okay, moving right along. I am a huge fan of this one. It is called, all these names, y'all, they are tricky for me. Sterenn, the Sterenn Beret by Avec Anna, which I think is a really cute name. I think this is an absolute stunner. I think its simplicity is what makes it shine. And I think if you looked at someone wearing it head on, it looks so classic and simple. But then there's this gorgeous star motif on top that is just gorgeous. And that it's like a textural star, or it almost also kind of, it looks very organic, like a leaf or a starfish maybe. It is so, so, so beautiful. And I think, to me, this one really would shine holding mohair double with fingering, and that's what she's calling for. It would just give it this glow, and then plus that star, so classic. Like, for those of you who prefer the more, knitting for olive and petite knit look of classic and clean, I think this is a beret that would be so timeless and wearable and just elegant. So, so, so elegant. I almost knit this one, but I'm not that elegant. So I definitely lean more towards a little crazier, because you can't fight nature. But I just think this would be so beautiful on the right person. I don't know. This one is about $4.50. And that's all I have to say about it. It's just too cute. You just couldn't go wrong with this one. Okay, next. Okay, this one was high on my list of, it was between this one and another one that I was like toggling between doing myself. and I chose the other one. However, that is really was just an arbitrary decision that I had to make because I just really needed to buy the pattern and start knitting. This is Western Sky by Caitlin Hunter. I really tried hard to find hats by designers that aren't very common, like well known. Like Caitlin Hunter to me is very well known, or like a Andrea Mowry or a Petite Knit. I was really trying to highlight some different designers, because another awesome thing about smaller projects is you can try a new designer and support their endeavor, their creative endeavors, and it doesn't feel like a huge investment of resources, both yarn and time and all that, to see if you jive with their pattern writing style, or just generally, I think it's important when we're thinking about the joy we get out of knitting to be knitting designers whose language we understand and whose pattern writing style we click with. Because if you're fighting against someone's writing style, you're swimming upstream. Like, that's going to take away from your joy. So I hesitate to try new designers on like big sweaters and stuff, but a hat is a fabulous entry point. And then if you like it, a lot of these incredible designers that aren't as well known have a deep archive of patterns you can explore. And then you have a whole new resource of knitting patterns for yourself. So anyway, back to Western Sky by Caitlin Hunter of Boylan Knitworks. I love her style so much. I think she has this really cool girl energy, and the way she herself styles and dresses is just so authentic, and I just love her. This hat is beautiful. I mean, I don't even feel like I need to extol its beauty and virtues. Like, I'm pulling it up on my own screen. It's stunning. It has this gorgeous texture, these beautiful baubles and lace, and I love the way the shaping comes together. It's a stunner. I just don't think you would have this hat and not be happy that you have this hat, no matter your style. I think, like in this picture, she's wearing a very simple sweater with this really gorgeous ornate hat. It just adds so much to anything you are wearing. I love it. I think it's absolutely stunning. So she has held fingering weight together with lace, which she says means DK. I don't know if I agree with that. I think a fingering plus a lace is more like a sport weight. But again, you've got a lot of flexibility with a hat to dive into what you already have. And if I know I've got bits and baubles of mohair skeins, too many, and a lot of times I just don't know what to do with them. And they're expensive and they're beautiful. This would be I think I might someday make this in. I have that leftover. If you've watched this past episode from many, many months ago, I knit who was it? Oh, it was Joji Locatelli. It was the lace and fade boxy, which it had a fingering weight panel next to a mohair panel, and they were matching colors. But I have a lot left over. It would be amazing to make a hat like this with that. But I do, however, think a hat like this shines more without a variegated yarn. So I would lean towards a solid or at least very tonal yarn, because it's so busy in the lace pattern and the baubles and all the things that are happening. If you then threw in a busy yarn, I think it would be a little chaotic. So I would lean towards making this out of simpler yarn, but baby, you do you. You do what makes you happy. So that is the Western Sky Beret by Caitlin Hunter. Just, oh my gosh, Caitlin Hunter is so talented. I don't know if you guys have seen the new cardigan and pullover she just released. I think they're called the Tutka, Tutka. I could be incorrect about that. I purchased the sweater because I fell in love with it. Like, this is the problem. It's so easy to fall in love, right? Like, we're falling in love with patterns on a weekly basis, and there's just, I need more arms and more hours in the day to knit. But that one went to the top of the list. It is just so beautiful. It's a worsted weight sweater, and I know I'm getting off track here, but it wouldn't be me if I didn't get off track a little bit. It's a worsted weight sweater with this gorgeous lace and bobble situation, and I love it so much. I just want it so bad. So it is on sale. I believe the code is sweater season. If you follow her on Instagram, you can go look up the code. I believe it's sweater season, and it's 30% off, which is fantastic. And if you foresee being obsessed with it like I am, go buy that. Okay, back to berets. Focus. Back to berets. I think second to last one I have for you is here we go again with pronunciation problems. Editha? I don't know. Again, I will leave the words for you on the screen so you can pronounce it how you will. By Daniela Muehlbauer. And it's called the Editha Tam. I think maybe Tam and beret are interchangeable words. Don't know. Love, love, love this pattern because out of all of these, to me, this has such a modern graphic color work look that's totally different from the first pattern that was color work that I showed you. This has just got that overall pattern, and it's so, so stunningly beautiful. I think it would be so fun to come up with different color combos. Like, I think it would be incredible in like a really vibrant, hot pink and white. I think, again, you could double up with mohair. You could just hold mohair on the white part, and so that's fluffy and soft, and then that graphic bit is more graphic against that. I think that would be so beautiful. And you could totally do that because she's calling for sport weight yarn. It is just really pretty. I really like the one. Also, there's a sample of somebody who posted where they did it in white and blue, and I love that color combination because it's this gorgeous, bright, rich blue. But also, she stopped the pattern halfway up and then just left the rest white, and I think that looks extremely elegant also. So you could totally make that pattern your own, and if you're loving the color work, then you keep going for it, and if you're not, then you can cut off early. It's color work. I just wanted to make sure it wasn't actually mosaic knitting because it could have been, I think, but no, it is color work. Also really cool about this one, she has matching patterns for a cowl and mitts. So I think if you're super into having all those accessories match, it would be super fun. This designer, I have never knit anything from her, but she has a lot of socks and accessories like to explore. So again, like I was saying, when you knit a small thing, it's a great entry point into a new designer. Okay, let's see. I feel like there was one more that I am not seeing that I had up. Okay, well, last but not least, I'm going to share with you the pattern that I decided to make. And I am so obsessed with it. It has been, every stitch has been an absolute joy. Like, even when I have made mistakes and have had to go back, even that hasn't bothered me because it's so much fun to knit this pattern. It is the Cutar Beret by Sari Nordlund. And I know sorry, my yarn is all tangled up here. I was saying how it's nice to be able to try lesser known designers, and Sari Nordlund is most certainly a well-known designer, and I've said this before when I've talked about her, it's just how prolific she is kind of blows my mind. She's incredible, but the Cutar Beret it was between, for me personally, I was choosing between the Cutar Beret and the Western Sky by Caitlin Hunter. I felt drawn to doing some lace work, which is sort of funny because I've always said I don't like lace. I don't like knitting lace. And I actually, knitting this hat, I don't think that's true. I think I actually love knitting lace. I think I thought I didn't like knitting lace because I knit this shawl by Stephen West. I even forgotten what it's called. I believe it's called the Meshy Twist shawl. I don't have it near me to show you. I loved this shawl because of its simplicity. It's just, the entire shawl is basically a bunch of eyelets, and then it has this gorgeous smocked border. It is so mind-blowingly stunning. But let me tell you, an entire shawl, a Stephen West fingering weight shawl, all in eyelets, which means every other row is basically only knit two togethers. It was exhausting. Like, that shawl was incredibly taxing. It was not my favorite, what's it called? Process. That's the word I'm looking for. It wasn't the best process knit, but that sort of put me off of lace. But that's not traditionally what lace is. Like, lace, each row is going to be very different. It's not going to be just like this repetitive thing. And that is what I found with this, is that, first of all, I've gotten much better and comfortable with a chart. It's so much easier than reading written directions now for me. And I'm just in love with this pattern. Why don't I just show you so you can decide for yourself? Here it is, mine so far. As you can see, this is a top-down beret. And it is funny because the only other, I'm gonna try to stretch it out so you can see. Can you just see how breathtaking that is, you guys? Like, I've said this many times before, but I really do feel like when it comes to knitting, a photograph is better than just words. And a video is better than a picture in terms of how much you can understand what actually it looks like. But when you see this in person, it is, oh my goodness. It is breathtaking. And apparently, I believe in the description, she said that it is a traditional Japanese knitting stitch that she found in, here it is, a Japanese knitting stitch in the Knitting Stitch Bible by Hitomi Shida. So I like that she says that because it is not her stitch pattern, but oh my goodness, it makes me want to get that stitch Bible because this thing it's beyond. And where do I even begin? Okay, well, let's talk about just technically. The other Sari Nordlund pattern I've only knit, this is only my second one. I'm more of just like an admirer of her work. But I knit the Robin beanie, and it too was a top-down hat, which I think is a non-traditional, way of knitting a hat. Like the Western Sky is bottom up. So you're doing the ribbing first and then doing the lace and tapering it. It didn't really go into my thought process. Like, it didn't matter to me. But this starts with a circular cast on, which I've done with that other hat. It's a little bit tricky, but not really. Like, it took me like 30 minutes to like pull up a video and all that jazz, but totally understandable. I think it's sort of similar to magic loop and crochet if you're a crocheter. And in fact, I did actually use a crochet hook because I thought it was a little bit easier. And then what else? I'm obviously holding it double with mohair. I knew I wanted like a really neutral one because I think the way hers looks on her is just absolutely perfect. That's totally what I was going for. So while I was going through my stash of fingering weight and mohair, I have had this forever and a year. This is Shibui Silk Cloud, and sadly Shibui is, They are no more. No more Shibui yarn, but this is, what is the colorway called? I don't even remember what this colorway is called, but it's this gorgeous silvery taupe color. I had gotten it to make, what's that top called? By Park and Knit, what's her name? Park Williams, is that right? Anyway, I think it's a Ghost Whisperer or something. You just hold a single strand of mohair. It's like a sheer, gorgeous top. I've shown it to you guys before. I've worn it. But I had a lot of this left over, and I've had it for so long, and I never found the perfect thing, because this is like I love this color. To me, this is just the perfect, slightly silvery, grayish, taupey, brown. It's a dream to me. So it was like I was saving it for something special. So I was like, this is perfect. And then I still have so much linen quill fresh nutmeg left over. I thought I would use that held together with this. But it was ruining the perfect tone of this cool taupe color, because it's a much browner tone. And then I found this in my stash. The only thing that was making me hesitate was that this was a full skein, and I was hesitant to bust into it because I bought this, if you would remember, if you've watched my previous videos, I bought this for the striped Esyan by Stephen West. I had bought this plus Oyster by Hedgehog Fiber, but I don't know when I'm going to knit that. It's not imminent. And since this was just so perfect to me, I just thought to myself, I can always, if I really am going to knit that, I can always buy another skein of this. So why not use it for what is making my heart happy right now? Like, why save it? I just think we should use the things and stop being so precious, you know? So this is going to be like a half skein, and that's okay. I'll put it in other things. I will remind you, since you can't read my mind, that this is the La Bien Aimée. It's a singles base, a merino single, and the colorway is called Jinju. I got this off of my favorite online shop, Woolen Company. I talk about them all the time, but they wind your yarn. So I love them forever and ever, and their customer service is incredible. So these are the two yarns I'm using. And this is my beautiful hat that I just absolutely love, love, love. I couldn't love anything more. It has everything that is beautiful in a lace hat. It has texture, it has movement. It's just, it just takes my breath away, truly. I'm officially going to stop saying I don't love knitting lace, because this has been absolutely so much fun. So one thing I do think about knitting lace is having really sharp pointed needles makes all the difference. And I know people who love knitting lace sometimes use those Haya sharps. I don't use those. I use Chowgoos. That's my dream needle because of the cord. It has no memory, so it's very floppy, and I'm doing magic loop, as you can see. And if the cord has a lot of tension and memory, it's like you're fighting the magic loop. So I think Chowgoos are just a dream for everything. Like, I sometimes wish I had two sets, because those are the only needles I like to use. This cord I would like to tell you about real quick. It is a 50-inch cord that I bought separately. Like, it didn't come in my interchangeable set. And I just bought it because sometimes the Stephen West shawls that I love to make are so enormous that I wanted a 50-inch cord. But actually, I don't love a 50-inch cord for shawls, because they're so big that like when you're turning your work, it almost becomes a little unwieldy. But I have found that for magic loop in a hat, it is my favorite, because when you knit magic loop, like, you've got basically two loops, right? The longer those loops are, the less gap there is here, is what I have found. So if you struggle with like that laddering issue sometimes that you can get with Magic Loop, I really suggest, these are so inexpensive, you know, not like $2. I don't remember how much they were, but under 15, I think. Such a great tool to have in your needle collection, because I'm not going to knit hats any other way now, because I don't love small circumference needles, because the smaller the needle becomes, the more tension I find in my hand. Like the regular size needle tips are the most comfortable for me to hold. And I find the looser I can hold my needles, the less tension there is in my hands, the less likelihood of me having any issues in my tennis elbow or up through my forearm. And especially with something like lace, where you are doing like slip, slip, knit and knit two together, which requires you to have a little more control and tension. To me, having full-size needles is kind of a non-negotiable. So having a sharp needle makes all the difference. And because this is I believe, size 2. So I dropped down. I really mostly dropped down. Well, number one, I'm a loose knitter. Number 2, the size she recommended, the US 3, is in my half and half triangles wrap. So I didn't want to take it off of that project because I still work on that. So this worked out perfectly. I love the fabric that's coming out, and I loved working, like everything here is working together so beautifully to make the knitting experience just perfect. It's perfect. It's like exactly what I needed. Another real quick tip I'm going to give you, and I gave you last time the last time I think I knit anything with lace is when I knit the Ranunculus by Midori Hirose, which again, loved. So I don't know what I'm talking about, apparently. I love lace, apparently. I think I just don't like really like traditional garments made out of lace. I like when lace is used in a modern way. Putting stitch markers between the lace repeats is the biggest, it's the biggest hack to save your like mental energy of wondering if you're completing, 'cause it's so many times. Let me just give you an example. Like for instance, there's lots of yarn overs in lace. Sometimes when you're looking at that chart, it's so easy to accidentally skip a yarn over or skip something. If you have stitch markers that separate one repeat of lace from the other, you will know immediately if you're off, and it'll keep you from getting all the way to the end of the row and then realizing you have a mistake and then having to backtrack. And when I started out, I had forgotten that tip. My friend Sharon had given me that tip when I was knitting the Ranunculus. I had forgotten about that tip, but then at some point I got off, and it took me so long to go back and then figure out where I had gone wrong. I just couldn't figure it out. And I think if I had had these stitch markers in from the jump, it would have been like that. I wouldn't have had that problem. So that is one thing that I think is extremely helpful. And the other thing I wanted to tell you guys, whenever we had that podcast episode about knitting tools that we keep in our notions bag, someone had told me to keep a safety pin, to keep, like if you don't have needle stoppers, if you have a safety pin, you can stick the safety pin through both of those little holes right there that you use to tighten, and then just safety pin this closed, and everything is nice and secure. I can't remember who told me that tip. I wish I did off the top of my head, because honey, life-changing, literally life-changing. There's not a single time that I don't put my needles like together like that with this project and I don't think of you, because it was such an easy and helpful tip. And because even the best needle stoppers don't do a great job when the needles are this thin, and because it's just so thin that they're just so easily fall off. That is just secure, and you don't have to worry about anything, like anything at all. So that is another tip that I have. The last tip I will give you is a lot of times it'll say keep a stitch marker at the beginning of the round, which I don't find super helpful once you get started because you're not changing the orientation of these stitches, right? These stitches are gonna stay in this orientation. So, and just so that at an easy glance I can see which side is the beginning of my round, I put a stitch marker in that side so I know, okay, the yellow side is the beginning of the round. And if I had to stop halfway through, when I come back, I'm not like, oh, looking for the beginning or whatever. This just helps me see that at a glance and not accidentally do a 1.5 rounds or just half a round or any of that. That was a lot of words, y'all. I did not think this was going to be a 45-minute episode about berets, but it's really exciting. One moment. To me, there is nothing more exciting than getting your mojo back. I am, let's see, I think I'm on like row or round 46, and I think there's 56 rounds in the pattern before the ribbing. So it's Friday. I'm obviously going to be done before next Thursday. So I'm very excited that I'll have my cute little beret. Let's hope I look cute and not foolish. And if I look foolish, then I won't wear it. And I don't care because the pattern was such a joy to make. It was all process. Literally all process. And I have been sitting on my patio, enjoying the late September weather, listening to the wind through the trees and the birds and my dogs just sitting there. And it's just, it has been like the most soothing thing you could ever imagine. I mean, if you know, you know. If you know, you don't need me to explain it because we're the lucky ones that have this, I don't know. I hate the word hobby because to me, it sounds so quaint and belittling. It's a passion, it's an obsession. And when it's not intact, I struggle with my mental health. So I am thrilled to have my love of knitting and the joy of making back. And if you have been on the struggle bus, hang in there. I hope something here was helpful to you. One of these projects was inspirational, or maybe you have no interest in berets, but maybe you loved a color work pattern and you'll go check out that designer. I encourage you to because I love the idea of supporting more lesser known fiber artists more. If you have any fun, interesting hats or patterns that have busted you out of a funk when you really needed it, please share in the comments. I adore your comments and the community that we are building. So please do share. It means so much to me. And I know everybody else loves to read the tips and thoughts that you guys leave. So please do. If you haven't, please subscribe. I would appreciate it so much. I would love for you to be here with me every week or so when we chit chat. Normally we chat more about life and other things, but today I'm running low on time, so I'm going to leave it here. And I hope you have a lovely weekend filled with fiber. And we only have like 6 more sleeps until my beloved Stephen West stops torturing us and lets us start our knit-alongs. I hope you've got your yarn wound up and your good luck needle. I have a special needle I use for my MCALs because it has that Stephen West magic uninterrupted in it. So I can't wait to bust that out. I have my Stephen West pride shawl on to help the time fly quicker. But anyway, I hope you have a lovely day and I will see you next time. Bye, guys.